Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Lipkowitz and I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams Capital Properties in Bethesda, Maryland. I specialize in both residential and equestrian properties and I serve Maryland and Virginia. Today I want to talk about how many horses you can keep per acre. Buyers ask this question all the time. How many acres do I need to keep X number of horses? Well, the answer really depends, and it varies based on how you're managing your horses. It varies based on where you're located. Google will tell you that you need 2 acres for the first horse and an additional half an acre to an acre for every horse after that. But horses are kept on smaller acreage every day. You go down to Florida, you see a 5-acre farm that's got 15 horses on it. So how do you decide? The very first thing you need to take into account is the local zoning ordinance. So counties, townships will have their own zoning ordinances. You'll find out what zone your property falls in and if there are any restrictions on how many horses you can keep per acre. It's also really important to pay attention to things like, can you run a business on that land? Can you keep animals but not breed them? So it's really important to read up and be educated on the laws in the area you're looking at. How you manage your horses will determine how much acreage you're going to require. If you keep your horses out all the time, you're going to want more acreage, and the reason for that is that you're going to see a lot more wear and tear on the paddocks, and smaller acreage requires a lot more management. You're going to have to do a lot more rotating of the pastures, a lot more reseeding, which can very quickly become cost prohibitive, and you're going to see your fence lines and the areas around your gate become very muddy. You can remedy this with wood chips or even, used bedding from the stalls that you're cleaning out, but on the whole, if your horses are staying out all the time, you're going to want more acreage, probably that 2 acres, and then every additional half acre per horse is more accurate for you. If you keep your horses in part of the time, or if you live in a place that, the grass doesn't really provide nutritional value anyway, you don't necessarily need to worry about that quite so much, and you can keep a lot more horses on a smaller plot. Chowder. This is Chowder. He's very naughty and grumpy. And he may or may not sit on my lap for the rest of this video. You don't know. In places like Maryland and Virginia, where we see a decent amount of rain throughout the year, the smaller the paddock, the muddier it's going to be and the less grass you're going to be able to grow. And if you've got easy keepers that can survive off grass and little to nothing else, it probably would save you more money long term to buy a little bit more acreage and keep your horses out. That being said, even horses that are only out, part of the time, the smaller the paddocks, the more wear and tear they're going to see. And again, seeding can really become expensive very, very quickly. It can take years for pastures to become reestablished if you've overgrazed them. So it's really important to think about where you are, what the soil is like, and what your horse's needs are. The other thing you need to think about is how much time you have. Obviously, large farms are a lot of work. There's a lot of maintaining fence lines, outbuildings, pastures, mowing, all that. But if you're able to keep your horses out without stalling them, it creates a lot less work in the sense that you don't have as many daily chores that you're going to have to do, cleaning stalls, turning horses, bringing them in and out, feeding them, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Especially if you've got easy keepers, if you can keep them out, with horses with gastrointestinal issues, oftentimes that's better for them. But, I've had horses on either end of the spectrum, so I'm not here to judge, but you need to think about how much time you have, and where you'd like to spend it. Do you want to spend your time doing chores, or would you rather spend the time on maintaining the larger property, doing a lot more mowing, a lot more fence line repair, but having a larger property where you're not seeing quite so many of those daily chores, bringing horses in and out. This may come across as relatively obvious, but money is also a big factor in how many acres you should have. So, obviously, can you afford the property? Talking to lenders who work with farm buyers, who work with USDA loans, farm credit, all that. But also kind of running the numbers, talking to local farm owners, getting an idea of the cost of bedding, of hay, of, seeding the pastures every year, and deciding what your budget will be for maintenance and upkeep, because that really is the big kicker for farms. They're not cheap to maintain. So the last thing I want to talk about is layout. Layout is huge when it comes to determining how many acres you're going to need. If you've got a big house in the middle of the plot and then, outbuildings and arenas, it really eats up a lot of the acreage quickly. And depending on where they're located, a larger property might actually be laid out in a way that gives you less functionality. So it's really important to kind of look at each individual farm, maybe look at a range of acreage, because a really well-designed 3-acre farmette might actually be more functional than a poorly designed 6-acre farmette. And at the end of the day, I think 2 acres for, zoning reasons and practical reasons is probably the smallest amount of acreage you want to keep horses on. Thank you for watching. Again, my name is Sarah Lipkowitz and I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams Capital Properties in Bethesda, Maryland. I specialize in both residential and equestrian properties in Maryland and Virginia.